Is it possible to live a longer quality life after a heart disease diagnosis? We are the patients who have resolved to become healthier, both physically and mentally. From managing symptoms to managing side effects, from managing medication to managing finances. We share the challenges and the triumphs. Discover what it really means to survive and thrive with a heart condition. This is Living with Heart Disease, a Heart of a Giant production. Here is our host, Somaneh Bouba.
Thank you all for joining. Essentially, just doing this recap, it's about my story it's about 10 years, I think, to this point. I remember my first diagnosis was in, and it was different countries, over the years too. So I was first diagnosed in South Africa. It was the end of 2012. And that's when we knew there was something wrong. And essentially they told me my heart was bigger than normal. So that led to a diagnosis of dilated cardiomyopathy, which basically means that, the heart got bigger over time and couldn't pump enough blood to the rest of the body. So you tend to be tired, might have some coughs when it gets a bit more intense. Lightheaded, I was tired a lot of times, so most of the time, but kept on trying, I guess the best I could in terms of activity and in terms of work and all of that. So we managed those 4 years fairly well. And this was in South Africa. So 2 years after the diagnosis, I moved to Senegal. And then that was after I got married with Desiree, and also our first son was born. So it was busy times. I was actually also finishing my master's around the same time. So with all of that done, we moved to Senegal, lived there for a bit, and everything was under control with medication, water pills, and a few others. And then I think coming to the fourth year where this was us living in Dakar now, so few miles from South Africa. And then we decided, so I decided to launch a business. So that was kind of going well. And then eventually eventually things were looking up. Eventually I got accepted into a fellowship program, which I think many of you heard about, might have heard about, but essentially the Young African Leadership Initiative. So they took us, a few of us, to come to the US and different universities. And I was in California. So the goal was to go there and then come to Boston to work for GE for, I think it was 6 weeks. So it was 12 weeks program. And then we had planned to be here for 2 more weeks because Desiree's parents live in Boston. So we thought it would be a good vacation. But then that's when I got worse. And then we did more in-depth tests at some point. And then he realized that, it was actually bigger than we thought. It got worse, and I needed a transplant at the time. So this was 2016, June, July. So we were in California, basically, far from everything we knew before. Desiree joined me from there. She was actually in Tanzania at the time for the project. So she had to cross the continent, come to Dakar, pack a few stuff in Senegal, and then fly all over to Boston, and then connect with me in California, which was Sacramento, to be specific. But then, that's when the idea of the transplant came in. So this was essentially 4 to 5 years into my journey. But then having a transplant at that time meant that we needed to essentially live in California for at least a year. And hoping to get the heart in that time and a couple of more months after that. So there's a life component that we had to consider, which was our biggest factor. And then while I waited for the heart, the idea was that I would be given this pump called the LVAD, which they put inside my heart, essentially bypassed. It kind of supported the left ventricle do its work. And then that helped me go. So that was a plan, but all of that were major operations that needed more support and some kind of life changes in terms of where we lived and everything around it. So at this time, this parent lived in Boston, so we figured it would be easier to have this procedure in Boston, and that's how we kind of moved there. Then at that time, Burak was, I think it was 2.5 years. And then essentially, so it meant that that time the time I was in California, it was just me and Desiree. So he had to stay with the grandparents for a month, and that was tough definitely tough on him. It was a bonding experience with the grandfather, but it was definitely tough on him because he didn't know what's happening. And 2 years old couldn't articulate, and every time we call, he would cry. So it was tough on us too, but kind of help us bond again. So we bond stronger, I guess. So we came back to Boston, stayed with the grandparents for a year. And so during that time, I came to the Brigham. I was referred to the Brigham from the Sutter Health Hospital in California. So they moved me here, and then they did the same evaluation and came to the same conclusion, heart transplant, and then got me the same plan in terms of LVAD. So during that time, I was on a pump called Milinon. So that was basically a medicine that will help your heart work harder. But essentially, it's like, basically, making a horse go faster. Eventually, the horse will get tired. So you don't want to be on it for too long. But I was lucky to be on it for 6 months, and I could manage with that. So we decided to have and this was in. So I was on that solution in July. So we moved to Boston in August. So when I got here, I saw the doctor in September, and then we decided we'll have the LVAD operation since it was a major open heart surgery to do that in beginning of the year in January. And then the month after, which was, actually on my birthday, I was listed to be on the transplant list. So those are dates I remember very well. So fast forward, I had the LVAD on in the beginning of January 2017, and then lived well with it for up to the transplant. I was able to heal fairly well, and I was able to stay active, including like physically. I was able to do some walk and run a little bit, which was not recommended, so I was very careful with it. And then did some martial arts to stay flexible and still strong, but nothing risky like I would have done when I was playing basketball or something else. I think a year after that, almost to the date, we found out we were pregnant again, and with the twins. So that was also another big change in life, and we credit to the LVAD. So at some point, sometimes we joke about the babies and we call them the LVAD babies. So, but that everything carried on well. We managed to moved to our own place, and we moved to Milton, which turned out to be a great neighborhood for us. A lot of kids on the street we were staying at, and then eventually started went to kindergarten, and then started the school system. The kids are also at the same pre-K. So with the LVAD, I was on for I would say 5 to 6 years almost. Everything went well for me. I didn't have any reaction or any kind of big issue until 2021. So I was having some bleeding, and then it eventually turned out that to be was basically malformed veins that were in my GI system that were bleeding. So we got that under control, and that was I think in April, May. But before that, I was essentially losing a lot of blood. We didn't know exactly that it was a big deal or what it was. So I did travel to Montserrat, which is an island in the Caribbean. It went well, but I was kind of too dehydrated, and then eventually kind of actually passed out twice. But I managed to stay careful and control it. I did talk to my team remotely. Then came to Boston, went for this hospital checkup. It was essentially I had to go twice. So it was like 2 1-week visits. This was in, I'll say May, then June or July. And then I got the scary one was in September where I had an infection. So that was a major one because one of the biggest risk with the LVAD is because the cable comes from your through your tummy area. There's a tube that comes out, and you want to essentially keep it clean, which they teach you how to do it, but things fall through the cracks sometimes. So I got an infection that we caught very early. So essentially, they just cleaned up a little bit and put me on antibiotics for a few weeks, which we managed. So things were under control. But that meant that my place on the list also moved. I was bumped up on the list. Essentially, the way the system works now is that we have, I love to make sure I remember, but essentially they have like a number of levels. So you have number 1, number 2. Those are priority patients that are in the hospital who really urgently need the organ. Then we have priority 3, level 3, where you have something like an infection, or you had an infection, but then you're still able to stay home and move around. Priority 4, that was my initial position, is you're living with an LVAD and you stay active, but you're listed. So it's there's a lot of other factors that come into it. My case was also, in addition to the matching system, which was a blood type, tissue type, and a few other elements. We needed a heart that was for somebody about my height. So I'm 6'7", 6'8". It meant that I guess anyone below 6'6" wouldn't work, but also the weight, all of those factors were taken into account. We live in Boston, so in that case, for me, meant that the dollar pool is smaller compared to larger states like California or Texas or even Florida. So the wait time will be longer. But I also know that my hospital, they're very strict on the kind of matching they do, or where they give the heart. So that was kind of the situation I was in. So fast forward to October 7th, which was, I'll say a few more things before I get to that. So after my LVAD, actually, what I did, as I get more active, I decided to go back to try to work. So I went to do some part-time work at the Apple store. So I did that for about a little bit over a year, close to 2 years. And then, so I was working part-time, and half the time I'll be home with the kids and doing other things. So eventually I went to work full-time. So I managed to kind of keep that going. And be active that way. And then that's in between that we launched the foundation. So past, let's say, even October, that time, I was more focused on, bringing in more grant resources, getting the teams going. So when they called me on the 7th, it was a Friday, right after school. So, it was just a chill vibe. I was a vibe in the house. So 4 p.m. ish. Then I get a call from one of my doctors, Dr. Neil, which I think when they will remember well. So essentially, he called me, and then everybody was playing around the house. Kids were playing, and then my mom was visiting. So she was at the dining table with Desiree, and then her mom was also here. So it was everybody in the house. So when I got a phone call, and it was from Dr. Neil, and it showed a Brigham number, because usually we might email each other or message each other different ways, but not direct call like that. So as soon as he said his name, I knew it was the heart. So I put the phone on speaker and then just made sure everybody can hear Desiree and her mom and my mom. And then I was ready to go to the hospital. So it was a Friday afternoon. So I remember I was about to, open my laptop to do some work. And then the same day I had received a call actually the day before, I had received a call for a new role, a new job. So all of this was happening at the same time. But essentially for me, what it meant is like drop everything, put a clean shirt on and get to the hospital. So we even though the doctor told us to take our time, because they were, they didn't tell us where the donor was coming from, but donor heart was coming from. But we had enough time to just go and then, get prepped. And a procedure will happen the day after. Because when a donor is found, or when somebody decides to donate after their passing, they will harvest all the organs. Usually the heart comes out last. And traditionally, they have ways to kind of delay that time, but usually the recommendation was to be within 2 hours of the hospital and get there within 2 hours, because the heart life at the time was 6 hours. But they have ways now to delay the harvest time, which they call it, when they remove the heart and then bring it to the hospital. But now they also have technology that allow them to keep the heart pumping, which allows them to literally bring it from one end of the country to the other. So we don't really know where it came from. We just know that it was a perfect match. Almost the same height. Everything else was the same. So we were excited about that. And then, so I came in that Friday night, Saturday morning. My procedure, was at 9. So they rolled me up at 7 in the morning. So next thing I know, I woke up and then they told me it was a Monday. So that was essentially like how everything changed. I said almost overnight. But I remember waking up, and this time there was no tube in my throat. And I was concerned about that because the previous time I was literally trying to remove I forgot the name again, but the tube out of my throat by myself. So this time I didn't have to deal with that. And then I asked them, and then they told me which day it was, and they say Monday. And I don't know, for some reason I expected to stay, under for many weeks, or at least, a week or two. But the recovery was going well, everything looked fine, procedure was well or went well. But it turns out, well, Desiree told me the day after, the Saturday, I did wake up and I waved at them, but I really don't remember being conscious at that time. So in ICU, it gets intense. They make sure to keep you going. Yeah, so that was the 8th, right? I got the procedure. So they kept me in ICU for a few days, making sure everything was under control. So I moved out of the ICU on the 13th, which is my birthday. So the ICU lady came up with some tricks. So there was a cupcake, and then there was they pull up a flame on the phone. There's like this app where you can have the flame. I don't know if it was an app or video. So I got my birthday cake like that, and the LVAD team, the nurses brought like a lot of balloons. And then in the afternoon, I was rolled out to go to recovery. So they call it step down. So I was there for, I would say, 2 more weeks. Be confused, 2 or 3 weeks. But essentially, what was happening there is that to get me up and ready and walk around and stuff. So I was able to walk around a few times, do the stairs. So it was 3 weeks. Sorry. And I remember it was 3 weeks because my blood pressure my body wasn't responding as naturally as it will. Basically, when you get up and you move, you try to be active, your body adjusts. And part of that is now influencing your blood pressure, or it will be seen in your blood pressure or heart rate and so on and so forth. So most of my heart rate was just almost flat, and my blood pressure was super high, putting me at a risk for a stroke, or I was losing my balance. Yeah, I was losing my balance a lot, and we didn't exactly know why. We're still kind of working around it, but part of the reason is that I was always with low pulse, and also having been on the LVAD for so long, close to 6 years, the body adjusts. So it took a while for my body to kind of get adjusted to the blood pressure. To get the blood pressure right, we also had to tweak the medication a little bit. But essentially what will happen is that, I'll be going from lying down to sitting up. I'll kind of get out of balance, and then it will get worse when I stand up, especially the first few seconds. And then I think part of the reason is also I was kind of a little bit eager, and fairly independent in general. So I was trying to just, I don't know, I tried a little bit hard to say, I guess, to tell the truth. So one Friday, that was my 2 weeks max. And I was actually supposed to come out that Friday to come home, but my kid had COVID. And then I think my kid and one of the uncle was staying with us had COVID. So it wasn't safe to come home. And then we extended by a week until they were all tested negative. That week allowed us to tweak things a little bit better and feel more comfortable. But that Friday, I actually passed out in the morning, and then, fell on the ground. I knew I was passing out, so I managed to control the fall. But it was that's the last thing they wanted in the hospital. So everybody came in, make sure they put me in the neck brace. They took me to MRI, and that was luckily there was nothing serious, but that's a big risk factor that nobody wants. So I remember one of the nurse assistants made sure that they knew whatever I was doing. So they will put sensors on the bed to know when I get up or move, and they'll make me leave the bathroom open at the hospital. So I have to go back to them to see them, but I haven't been there since. But that's the level of like attention and focus that they had. So to make sure everything was perfect. So I had to carry the same patience when I came home. So I had a small cane that would turn into a chair to walk in a few days. And I remember Desiree and the family would be on my case. But soon after that, I managed to let go of the cane and, move it a little bit. Walking around with my buddies. We do this weekly walk every Saturday morning at 8. We call it the men walk, but we go around the pond a couple of times. So I was able to join them that same weekend. I came up on like on a Wednesday or something. And then the following day, I went to the soccer pitch to watch the Burak play. I'm their coach, but obviously some people had to take over. So I was there. It turns out everybody in the community knew about it, so people were like happy, and I was always also happy that to see everyone and then have them appreciated their support and the concern. We had a lot of people come through. Many of you via, I guess, social media or emails, and then or phone, and then we also decide. So we're very touched and very honored and very supported along the way. So that's kind of the journey all the way to home. And then big part of that is that you get this new heart. Like I mentioned about the balances, which is linked to they call it the vegan nerve. Because what happens when they get a new heart, there's many nerves that they kind of shut down. So your body has to make those connections over time, and sometimes might not even happen. But all of those will have to be like reset, and your body has to adjust to that. The other factor that the other thing you have to do is a lot of medication. So for anti-rejection, to make sure your body doesn't reject the heart, but vice versa also, that the heart accepts the body, and then there's no complication on that side. So put on a few dosage of some medication to allow for that. And I think that's a medication I'll be on, I guess, for the rest of my life going forward. But on top of that, they give you a lot of vitamins, whether it's against, making sure you get enough vitamin D, vitamin E, C, calcium, the usual. But in this case, it gets a bit more important that you have those to make sure you don't have any kind of you're exposed to other risks, including skin cancer. So making sure you're well protected around. So that's like some adjustment you have to make. Then in addition to that, I had my magnesium level was low, which is one of the simple way to say it for me is like you need this chemical imbalance like magnesium, potassium, and so on and so forth to make sure that the electric signal in your heart are well regulated, and also that affect other organs. So my magnesium level was low, so we had to be beyond the highest dosage for a bit, and then make sure that's adjusted. The other element is that I was put on at least three, how do you call it, anti-infection prophylactics medicine, and all of this kind of got tapered down over time, and then this is at the 6 months, that's when the big kind of shifts happen. So I'm basically taking half of the meds I was taking like for the previous few months. And then, so now you're also, less chemical in your body. You also respond better. But physically, I was able to heal very fast and well. I was able to clear, like my chest. I was clear to drive. Usually they tell you not to drive for within the first 3 months, because your body will take the sternum, the chest will heal within 8 to 10 weeks. So in my case, we waited till the 3 months mark, and I was clear to drive. Also meant that I was clear to go back to physical exercise. One of the first steps we do is called cardiac rehab. And what I did in between that is that I went for weekly massages because I was getting a lot of issues, like back issues, which was like second time around. But every time I kind of lay flat for too long, my back started to kill me. So I had the same with the LVAD journey, same thing also now. But the LVAD this one was a bit intense because I remember it got worse over the weekend, and there was no heating pad in the hospital. They were trying to get me one, but they couldn't find it. And of course, I wasn't thinking properly. So I'm like, no, I can just grab one at Walmart. So Desiree brought me one, started to feel better, got some tubes of Voltaren, some medicine I can rub on, and then painkillers. So I continued the massage on this side. It helped my recovery, also just release the stress. And I also signed up with a physical trainer to start maybe going once a week, 30 minutes, just to make sure I have the right forms. So that all went well. And that was in, I think, January. But then I had to slow down in February because I caught the cold, and it was very intense. I was having very intense coughs. And then, so that was the month of February. So I managed that. So I'll slow down on the spot, but I was active in terms of work and many other things. And then March, I started having a growth. You might not see it well, but basically between my fingers here, was a growth that came out, and then it was a round ball, like small, and started growing, and then there was fluid inside. So it didn't look like infected at first. Actually, it didn't look like infected until we kind of did the biopsy, and then all the fluids came out. But it turns out that it was, and we did a procedure to remove it out. But it turns out to be just not just, but it turns out to be a fungus that had grown. And we don't know when it happened, but the theory is that maybe some of the medicine kind of pushed it out, but likely it didn't spread on the body. So we managed to get it right. That was, I guess, March, and then April marked my 6 months, and I've been really good, being able to keep up with work, working full time. And I did mention earlier about the job call I got the day before I got the heart transplant call. So I was essentially in ICU, negotiating with them, and mostly I was trying to negotiate the start date. I told them I had a big operation, and I probably want to start, but they were keen to get me started in November 21st to be, like I remember they were insisting that. So eventually I talked to the hiring manager and I explained to her, but they were very understanding, and it wasn't an issue for them. So I still joined on the 21st, but very slowly. Plus, it was December, so my onboarding was very smooth, and I slowly started to pick up work. So I'm, still not cruising, but being able to pick up. And the other part that many of you know is the foundation. So we're making sure that we're becoming as legit as possible. So making sure we have the right operations, the right procedures in place, and also making sure we have all the compliance with regard to states and government. So being excited about that part. So that, that kind of mini break allowed me to complete many of those to our, things, all the admin stuff around that, but also plan for the new year. So the year started with a big bang, been really doing well. Kids are great. I was kind of, away for a while, just sleeping more. I think my sleep got better since the operation. I always struggle to sleep. I would probably do 5-hour stops and feel fine. But when you get sick, it's a bit different. And so with the LVAD, I was still struggling. I was taking melatonin every night. But eventually, right now, I only take half of the dose once in a while. I don't need to do that more. I wasn't dependent on it, but I think I have better quality of sleep. And then also mentally, you kind of adjust a little bit. The one thing that happened when you get on the medicine, one of them is it's actually steroids. So, I noticed that I got a bit more snappy. Poor kids, even Desiree. But likely we didn't stay on it too long and came off it. But these are all the things they kind of prepare you or try to prepare you against, to be aware of it at least, and also the family side to be aware. So they knew it wasn't necessarily me or the medicine, even though I feel like something was necessary. So those were to me, some of the, side effects or adjustments I had to make. So right now, even when I exercise, I take it easy, because it's a long journey. But it's been an amazing journey in the sense that it's been perfect. And then, so sometimes I joke with the team to make sure that, I ask them, I'm like, this is too good to be true, because it still feels like a dream. But they're super happy and impressed. I guess they cannot tell you everything, but I think it went better than all of us expected. So we're super grateful. And then we also been on this journey for so long that we understand that the medical system, we get to enjoy. I got to enjoy or benefit from the doctors and everybody's essentially it's super crucial. And they make all the difference, I would say. But at the same time, you also need a great support system to go through the day-to-day, the big dates, manage the kids. We had the small kids come visit me and understanding essentially what biology is about, human anatomy, because Burak knew, because it was there from the beginning. But the twins, we told them we're gonna get a new heart. They were literally trying to see what the new heart was. They will give you a pillow that you have to hug all the time, and it's in the shape of a heart. So one of my twins was like, "Is this your new heart?" So we literally had to make them, got some anatomy going. Our friend next door is it's a science teacher. So he came up, and while I was in the hospital, I actually taught them a little bit that, and so now they know a little bit better. The other fun fact is that when you have the LVAD, it's basically it's a pump, a mechanical pump. they try to make it as adapted to the body as possible, the human body. So they have the pump had a sound like a wailing sound that was like an arcade. It was like doo doo, and so the kids, especially even Burak, did remember my heartbeat before, but like even them, that's what my heartbeat was to them. So when you go to the hospital, everybody was excited for them to hear the new heart, and we put on a stethoscope, and then they're like, "There's nothing." It's like because they didn't know what a heartbeat sounded like, and so moments like that were very fun for us to see and to see the change in their mind. And then the one thing they want is when I was coming home, they understood everything I was saying, but they wanted me to be back home. I think it was tough on them. In front of me, they tried to keep it together. But Burak was at school. They told me he was perfect. The counselor, the teachers were impressed by him. Both of the twins too, but one of them you could see was adopted until the day I came. Or they told him I was coming back. So the teachers like, we knew you were home when, that day because of his attitude. And that's the young one, Sankara. And then Semen it was fine. They kept it together. They was giving the mom more hard time than anyone else. But they began to vocalize some of the feelings. So those were helpful in that time. So just being super grateful for all of that. And then my team at the foundation and everybody I talked to daily. So we kept going. We kept doing some work.
We are reminded that we are all connected through our experiences of friends, family, and community. We thank our guests for your generosity of heart, looking beyond your sorrows to share your journeys and inspire others. And thank you for listening to this episode. We hope it did your heart good. Visit us online for more resources at heartofagiant.org.